The movie begins with a glimpse into the life of Ellen, a lonely and sorrowful girl who has been burdened with sadness since childhood. Desperate for comfort, she calls out to anyone who might hear her, whether it be God, a guardian angel, or some other force. To her surprise, her call is answered. A terrifying voice responds, though the face behind it remains unseen, visible only to Ellen. This mysterious being tells Ellen that she has pulled him out of the darkness, and now he can walk among humans. Whatever this being is, it's clear it's not human. In the next scene, Ellen is shown in a trance-like state as the terrifying figure begins choking her, but before this, he doesn't forget T9 enjoy his beauty. The story then shifts forward to the year 1838 in a fictional German town called Wisborg. A new life but lingering shadows. Ellen is now married to a real estate agent named Thomas, who deeply loves her and does everything to care for her. Despite his devotion, Ellen continues to be tormented by horrifying nightmares and visions that plague her daily. This situation leaves Thomas worried and financially unstable as he tries to pay for her treatment. He wants to give her everything that she demands. One day at work, Thomas's boss, Herr Knock, informs him about an important assignment, selling the largest mansion in Wisborg. A wealthy client, Count Orlok, from the Carpathian Mountains of Transylvania, is interested in purchasing it. Thomas must travel to finalize the deal, and if successful, he'll earn enough money to secure their future. Excited yet nervous, Thomas returns home to tell Ellen about his upcoming trip. She becomes visibly upset and pleads with him not to leave, as she's afraid of being alone. Ellen shares a strange dream she once had in which she married death itself, leaving her surrounded by happiness that turned to emptiness. Thomas reassures her and convinces her that he must go. As she is haunted by nightmares, his husband has left her to Anna's house, who is Ellen's best friend. Also, Anna's daughter is close to Ellen. Before he leaves, Ellen gives him a locket containing a strand of her hair, a sentimental token of her love. After this, Thomas sets out on his journey, eventually arriving at a small town near the Carpathian Mountains, where he plans to stay the night. The locals, including the innkeeper, react with dread when he mentions Count Orlok's castle. They warn him to abandon his trip, saying the castle is home to an unspeakable evil that brings destruction. Dismissing their warnings, Thomas rents a room for the night. Also, the landlord warns him not to go there, and Thomas is pissed of listening to the same statement again and again. While staying there, he witnesses a bizarre ritual involving gypsies. They lead a naked woman on horseback to a graveyard, where they stab a corpse in a grave they claim belongs to a vampire. Thomas is horrified by the scene and wonders if it was all just a dream. The next morning, he realizes it wasn't and continues his journey. On the other, it's revealed Knock has made pact with a mysterious creature that is none other than but a vampire. Knock has become his servant and is dying to serve him. As he approaches Count Orlok's castle, a mysterious horse-drawn carriage appears and transports him directly to the eerie fortress. Thomas finally meets the Count, whose face remains hidden in shadow, but his voice is horrible. Orlok is strange and unsettling, but he wastes no time finalizing the real estate deal. Also, Thomas inquires about rumors about him, but he considers them a white lie, who knows it's going to be his biggest nightmare for entire life. During dinner, Thomas accidentally cuts his finger, causing a drop of blood to fall. Orlok reacts oddly. His behavior becomes as he looks at the blood. Thomas is scared by Orlok's behavior. That night, Thomas wakes to find strange bite marks on his chest. Orlok dismisses his concerns, blaming the marks of wild mice. Later, they sign the deal, but language belongs to Orlok forefathers. So, without reading and understanding the contract, Orlok has already seen the locket of love and doesn't take a second to take from him. Next night, Thomas again feels bite marks has grown, which reveals someone again has sucked his blood. However, Thomas begins to suspect something sinister is happening. While exploring the castle, he stumbles upon a hidden chamber containing a coffin. When he opens it, he is horrified to find Orlok lying inside, revealing the Count's true nature as a vampire. Thomas attempts to escape, but is cornered. Orlok takes Ellen's locket and seems to form a supernatural connection to her. Also, Orlok starts sucking Thomas's blood. Meanwhile, Thomas's situation grows dire. He is attacked by wolves and falls into a river while attempting to escape the castle. Back in Wisborg, Ellen becomes increasingly distressed, experiencing seizures and strange visions. Her friends, Friedrich and Anna, try to comfort her, but her condition worsens. Friedrich calls a doctor who prescribes medication and summons an expert, Professor Alban, to help. The story picks up with Knock, Thomas's boss, who has now completely descended into madness. His insatiable craving for raw meat grows more horrifying as he begins catching rats and birds, devouring them alive. His behavior becomes increasingly violent, even attacking humans. His obsession is clear. He eagerly anticipates the arrival of Count Orlok, referring to him as his master, and declares that death will soon spread across the city under the Count's command. Meanwhile, Thomas, who survived his fall into the river, is found unconscious on the shore by a group of nuns. They take him into their church and care for his wounds, conducting a ceremony to cleanse his soul. The head nun explains that Thomas is under the possession of an evil force, Count Orlok. She warns him that his soul is trapped in the Count's dead body and insists he must stay within the church, as it is a sacred place where the Count's evil cannot reach. However, Thomas is determined to leave. He knows that Ellen is in danger, and despite the nun's warnings, he sets out to save her. Before he departs, the head nun cryptically reveals the truth about the deal. The agreement was not about property, but Ellen herself. The Count doesn't wish to take Ellen by force. He wants her to willingly surrender herself to him. This sinister plan forces Thomas to act quickly. The narrative shifts to the Demeter, the ship transporting Count Orlok to the city. During the voyage, the Count emerges from his coffin and begins killing the crew one by one. The ship becomes a floating nightmare, teeming with plague-ridden rats that the Count has brought to spread death and disease. These rats kill some crew members, while others fall prey to the Count himself. By the time the Demeter reaches the city, no one on board is alive, and the streets become overrun with the rats, unleashing a devastating plague. Back in the city, Ellen's mental state deteriorates further. She has terrifying nightmares of the Count, who warns her that he is coming to claim her. Her psychic connection to the Count reveals his every move and intention. She confesses to Professor Alban that she feels trapped, as the Count has vowed to kill everyone she loves unless she surrenders herself willingly. Ellen's troubled past comes to light. As a lonely child with psychic abilities, she unwittingly formed a bond with the Count. Mistaking him for a guardian angel or divine presence, she prayed to him for comfort, not realizing she had called upon a demonic entity. This connection allowed the Count to influence her dreams and shape her life from a young age. Despite her resistance, Ellen struggles against the Count's psychological hold on her. Meanwhile, Knock escapes from the asylum, murdering a hospital worker in the process, and returns to serve the Count. On the other hand, Thomas has also returned, but his condition is critical. Ellen is taking care of him. The Count finally arrives at the mansion he had purchased through Thomas. He takes up residence, declaring it his new home. Knock, still under his control, assures the Count that Ellen will come to him willingly, and he won't need to use force. However, the Count warns that if Ellen does not surrender herself, he will unleash unimaginable horrors on the city. The city descends into chaos as the plague spreads rapidly. Thousands of people succumb to the disease, and panic grips the streets. Professor Alban warns the townsfolk that this plague is the work of a demon, but most dismiss his claims. attributing it to the rats instead. Aside from this, Ellen's nightmares grow worse. In one chilling vision, the Count tries to manipulate her by claiming that Thomas betrayed her. He tells her that Thomas willingly signed the divorce papers in exchange for money. Though Ellen doesn't fully believe him, the seeds of doubt and heartbreak begin to take root. Ellen also looks in her dream that mice are eating her friend Anna. As a result, Anna is in hospital, and her husband blames Ellen for this and asks them to leave his house. Later, the professor examines the dead bodies and scary things he has found. In the bodies, there is no blood. Just then, they checked the Knock cabin and realized they had to fight with Nosferatu. The problem is that they have never fought with a vampire and don't know how to deal with him. One night, Ellen dreams of the Count standing over her. He offers her an ultimatum: surrender willingly, or he will kill everyone she loves, starting with Thomas. Ellen refuses, and the Count retaliates by killing Anna's 2 daughters and Anna in a horrifying act of revenge. This tragedy shatters Ellen, who feels increasingly cornered by the Count's threats. Meanwhile, Thomas tries to reunite with Ellen, but her condition has worsened. She shares her fears with him, admitting that the Count has been tormenting her since childhood and that his presence in the city has only made things worse. Thomas, still recovering from his own harrowing experience, promises to protect her, though he struggles to understand the full extent of her connection to the Count. On the other hand, Anna's husband is intimate with his wife's dead body and himself dies with a plague. Desperate to end the nightmare, Ellen devises a plan. She learns from Albin that the only way to defeat the Count is to lure him into the sunlight, which will destroy him. However, this can only be achieved if Ellen willingly gives herself to him, as her surrender will bind him to her long enough for the plan to work. Ellen prepares herself, dressing elegantly to meet the Count. She tells Thomas to leave and not interfere, assuring him that this is the only way to save the city. Thomas reluctantly agrees, though it breaks his heart to leave her. Ellen invites the Count to her home, seducing him to keep him distracted until dawn. The Count, overwhelmed by his desire for her, begins to feed on her blood. As the first rays of sunlight pierce through the windows, the Count realizes too late that he has been tricked. The sunlight engulfs him, burning his body until he disintegrates into ash. However, Ellen's sacrifice comes at a great cost. The blood loss from the Count's attack leaves her gravely weakened. Thomas rushes to her side, holding her as she takes her final breaths. She dies in his arms, her face serene, knowing she has saved the city and broken the Count's curse. If you like this movie, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel.